Well, I'd like to thank you all for showing up on this bright and cheery October day. As Governor Ventura told me, we set a record for the highest snowfall, but
Second highest.
second highest.
It trails only the October Halloween snowfall of 91.
And today we're going to hear from a good friend of mine and native son from St. Louis Park originally, Brock Pierce. He's going to be talking first, and then we're going to have another one of my good old buddies, Governor Jesse Ventura, that we got to know quite well during the good old late 90s and whatever. But thanks for coming here. And at that, we'll let Brock come up and tell us a little bit about what's going on with this campaign.
Thank you, Senator. Grateful to be back here in Minnesota, my home state. I grew up here as an actor. I got a start in the movie business with the Mighty Ducks, playing Gordon Bombay in the flashback scenes, young Emilio Estevez opening up the movie, famously missing that shot, setting the premise for the movie, and I promise you, if it hadn't been written in the script that way, I would have made it. But I moved out to California to continue my acting career, making a movie called First Kid, where I played the son of the President of the United States of America, with Sinbad as my Secret Service agent. But at the age of 16, having been a byproduct of the first generation of kids with access to computers and the internet, and Oregon Trail for those that remember, I recognized that technology was going to change the world. And I decided to become an internet entrepreneur. I remember my management and agents at the time saying, "What? You can't quit? You're about to be making 7 figures of film. Do what?" I'm like, "I'm going to become a technology entrepreneur." They're like, "You didn't go to school for that. That's impossible. You'll never succeed." I said, "Well, all right, I'm going to do it anyway." And so I've been doing that my whole life, building businesses, principally in technology, things that everyone said was impossible because they had never been done before. Creating things like the U.S. digital dollar that's doing $10 trillion a year in transactional volumes right now. That framework being the system that governments around the world are using to digitize or use technology to enhance their currency. The Chinese government is years ahead of us now with their Chinese digital yuan. And after having held offices all over the world, having built things out of nothing over and over again, I recognized what mattered to me was not what I have, but I measure my success by what I give. And recognizing that I wanted to give back to this country, I moved to Puerto Rico, recognizing it was the part of the U.S. that was hurting the most right after Hurricane Maria, during the largest blackout in U.S. history. Supporting philanthropic organizations, dozens of them, trying to figure out how to solve problems around food security, energy, community development, creating innovation or bringing innovation and investment to the island. I'm looking at what's going on in the world right now, and if you see what I see, if you feel what I feel, something's wrong. I can summarize why I'm running for office in one word. That's love. Love for this country. Love for the American people. At a time where these United States are feeling like the divided states. We're divided politically. We're divided economically. We're divided racially while simultaneously facing real existential threats environmentally, technologically, pandemically, potential conflicts with foreign nation states. We have to find a path back to unity. We have to start solving our problems, and we've got a lot of them. I think we're doomed if we don't do something different. But there is good news. Our problems can be solved with innovation. We do have 21st century solutions to our 21st century problems. And the main message I would like to impart on the American people is a reminder to act according to your conscience, to always do what you believe is right, to stop trying to find the things that you're against and remember what you stand for, to vote your conscience. We're going to stay in this perpetual cycle until we start acting according to our conscience. As Albert Einstein is often credited with saying, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. The US dollar is an issue that you're not hearing about. The US dollar is the foundation of our nation, the foundation of our nation's economy. And it is at risk because of our national debt and our fiscal policy, the things that we're doing to erode trust and faith and confidence in it. Did you know that 22% of all dollars in existence were created this year? We are also facing external threats from technology, and we have to stay on the forefront of innovation. The United States has been the capital of innovation for a long time, and it is important that through this fourth industrial revolution that we continue to maintain leadership in this area. The United States has been failing to lead, and the world needs real leadership right now. I think we need visionary leadership with our finger on the pulse. Technology is amoral. It is neither good or bad. It is a tool. And how we use it will determine the impact it has on our lives. Look at how social networking is impacting our democratic process. Look at censorship that is not just happening this week, but it's been happening for years and years and is finally being brought to the attention of the American people. Right now, we've got artificial intelligence coming online. Automation combined with robotics. This is going to change the landscape of work. Tens of millions of jobs are going to be replaced by technology, not just service-level jobs. There's 3.5 million truck drivers in this country, Uber drivers, Lyft drivers, taxi drivers, stockbrokers, accountants, surgeons. It is important that we have the foresight and the vision to navigate the opportunistic but challenging road ahead. I believe in us. I have faith in us. Every time we've faced great challenges, we've overcome it, like the Great Depression, like World War I, like World War II, and we need to find a unified vision to overcome these challenges again. What is our 5-year plan? What is the 10 and 25-year plan for this country? Where are we going? What is our aim? Without an aim, you will wander aimlessly. You'll run around in circles. How do we measure our success as a nation? How do we define it? Historically, we've defined success by growth or GDP. The problem with growth is it doesn't differentiate between positive and negative growth. The American people getting sick creates growth. It also assumes infinite resources, which we've known for some time we do not have. It's also creating great conflict. For me to win, you have to lose mentalities. I think we should step back and start thinking about how we measure and define our success as a nation. The founders of this country had a very powerful intention for us. That was life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. What if we started to define our success by life? Did you know that life expectancy in this country has been in decline despite all the advancements in medicine, science, and technology? What if we measured our success by life expectancy? What if we held our government to account by it and elected our officials by their ability to focus on that? Policy would change. The private sector would change. Our air would become clean, as would our water, and our food would be less filled with toxins. And what about liberty? We're supposed to be the land of the free, but we have more people in prison than any other country in the world. What if we started to measure our success by our freedom? And happiness, the pursuit of happiness. There are already a number of countries around the world that are measuring their success by happiness. I think it's time we upgrade the operating system of the United States of America. I think it's time we start to change the game. And I look forward to continuing these conversations with you. Thank you for showing up. God bless Minnesota. God bless America. Thank you, Jesse Ventura, Governor, for showing up here today. Would love to hear a few words from you.
Thank you. Thanks, Brock. Well, his enthusiasm's pretty contagious, isn't it? You can't help but listen a little. I'll take my mask off now that things are fairly safe here. You're far enough away from me. And I from you, I guess. I'm here to tell people to vote, to get out and vote. It's something that is a rare thing that we have here, and yet 50% basically of all Americans don't even bother. They don't even bother to vote. I remember when I ran for governor, it was an off-year election. It wasn't a presidential. They expected a 50% voter turnout, and Minnesota led the nation. 50%. Well, what happened? It turned out to be 60. That was my winning margin. I was polling 27% the day of the election. 10% more people showed up than what they anticipated. Those 10% put me over the top, and I became the 38th governor of Minnesota. Voting, I'll tell you what, for me, it goes back to when I was 18. I was 18 years old. I enlisted in the United States Navy. I spent 13 months being trained. I then deployed overseas to Southeast Asia and did a 9-month deployment. I came back to the United States of America after 13 months of training, 9-month deployment. I'd been back 5 days. I walked into my executive officer and I said, "Sir, I want to go back to Asia. I want to go back to Vietnam right now." He looked at me and said, "You can't do that. You got to spend 6 months stateside. You just returned from a deployment. It's a requirement." But he was good enough to say, "What's the problem?" And I told him what the problem was. The problem was I couldn't go up the street and drink a beer. The problem was I couldn't vote. Imagine that. I could go to fight for my country, potentially kill for my country or be killed, and yet I wasn't allowed to vote because voting for 18-year-olds didn't come in until 1972. This was 71, 1 year before. So I'm old enough to die for my country, but I'm not old enough to pick who sends me over there to die. So you know what I deduced from that? We send children to war, and we're still doing it today. Everybody thinks this tobacco deal's a great thing. Don't sell tobacco to anybody under 21 years of age. Yeah, on the surface that looks good, but explain that to me after 50 years. You mean you can go to Iraq and die, but you can't buy a cigarette? You ain't old enough? What I learned from all that, people, is we send children to war. Wouldn't that be considered child abuse? We don't give them the ability to be adults, but yet they can go off to foreign countries and die. And so that's my thing with voting. I wasn't even allowed to vote. After I had already completed a 9-month tour to Southeast Asia, I wasn't an adult yet. That's why voting is so important to me. Because we people, the 1%ers who serve in the military, that's why we serve, is so that you have the opportunity to vote. You have the opportunity to control your government and have a say-so in it. Don't blow it. Go out and vote. Vote now, vote early, and who was it used to say, vote often? I forget, was it Mondale used to say that all the time? I don't know, but anyway, what are we facing now? The same as usual for people like me. I'm fiscally conservative, but I'm socially liberal. Who do I vote for? What candidate is out there for Jesse Ventura? There is none, because I'm fiscally conservative and socially liberal. That's why we need 3 and 4 choices. We have a two-party monopoly right now, a two-party dictatorship. I believe Ralph Nader used to call it that. the two-party dictatorship. And that's what we're faced with now. And we're also faced with control by these two parties that won't allow anyone else in the game. That's their ultimate goal. See, that's why I made the statement this year, we have to elect a third-party president. Why? Because if you elect Biden, the polarization continues. If you re-elect Trump, the polarization continues. If you elect a third-party person, that gives the two major parties a common enemy then. They will then turn on that third party, and within 3 years, just like what happened here in Minnesota, go back in history. For the first 3 years, I had a Republican House, a Democratic Senate. Whoever I seemed to side with prevailed until that last year. That's when they jumped in bed together. They opposed me, the common sense middle, and they wouldn't accept my budget. Their budget that they put forward was fiscally irresponsible. I vetoed it twice. I did everything I could to stop that budget. They overrode my veto because they were in bed together now. What was the result for Minnesota? I believe after I left, you had a $5 billion deficit because of these two parties becoming political, opposing me. They were willing to sacrifice Minnesotans and our budget and our economy strictly to get a political opponent. That's how these two parties work. If you don't know the history, 92, Ross Perot got 20% of the vote. 20%, 1 out of 5. Yet in 96, he wasn't allowed in the debates. You want to know why? Because Dole and Clinton cut a deal. And the debate commissions are made up of Democrats and Republicans who rubber stamp anything they want. They cut a deal. Dole didn't want Perot in the debates because he felt it would erode from his conservative base. Clinton didn't want debates at all because he was so far ahead he didn't need them. So the final result was there were only 2 debates in 96, held on the same night as the World Series. Same night, on purpose. And that satisfied Clinton, and Clinton agreed, and Perot was cut out. Imagine that. A guy getting 1 out of 5 votes, and in the next election he's not even allowed in the debates. Is that America? Is that freedom? Is that you being given every opportunity to vote for the candidate of your choice? I don't think so. You know, the main thing, and you heard it earlier, vote your heart, vote your conscience. There is no wasted vote. If you vote your heart and conscience, you haven't wasted your vote. We're made to pick the lesser of 2 evils all the time, and I'm tired of it. I'm tired of having to pick the lesser of 2 evils. I want to vote for someone, not against someone. I want to look ahead and be positive, not negative. And that's what you get today. I mean, look at today, the negatives of these 2 candidates, Biden and our current president. They're the highest they've ever been. This was the year for the third-party candidate to prevail. Unfortunately, the third parties are in disarray and couldn't come up with any focused candidate at all. It was really too bad. But change has to come from the inside, not the outside. You can do a lot from the outside, but ultimately you have to get inside to make those changes. And that's only going to happen by people voting and voting in the right people in office. You know, they've created a system, the Democrats and Republicans, and it's truly laughable. It's a system of bribery. Bribery. Now imagine if you do that in the private sector, what happens to you? You go to jail. And yet our public policy and our politics, bribery is the accepted norm. How do you think you get in to see one of these congressmen or senators? You think you can go in without bringing a check? Guess again. You ain't seeing the front door unless you walk in holding some money for them. That's called bribery. Giving money to someone to get a result. In the private sector, I'll repeat myself, it's illegal. It's against the law. You'll go to jail. And yet the Democrats and Republicans have created an entire system based upon it, based upon breaking the law. And so for those people that are 20 and 25 years in the government like that, obviously they're people that have no problem breaking the law to begin with. In other words, they're a bunch of crooks. Let's put it straight. Because if you agree with bribery and you think that's a norm, that makes you a crook, in my book. And we've got to get away from that. Now it's happening though. I don't know if you're aware, but there's movements out there. There's something happening right now called the People's Party, and it's growing. It's up to 122,000 people are operating and working in it now. And some of those people include Susan Sarandon, Danny DeVito, some big name people, Jesse Ventura, some big name people, because we want to see a third choice come out. It may be somewhat too late this year. You know, I commend Brock for running. I tip my hat to him. Good for him. Anybody should run who wants to run, and anyone should be allowed to run if they qualify. And they always ask you, oh, how are you qualified? Well, the only thing it says, you got to be 35 and a citizen of the United States. That's the only qualifications to be elected. And so that's my point today, is that we get out and vote, people, because there's veterans out there that gave their lives for you to have that opportunity to cast your vote. And I'll tell you something, right now, I'm losing a lot of faith in America. I am. I'll tell you, I'm glad that right now we're not faced with World War II, where my mother and father are both veterans. Not many people can say their mom is a World War II veteran. My mom's buried at Fort Snelling. But the country sacrificed in World War II. Do you think there would have been any argument over wearing a mask for the people of World War II? I'll tell you, if we behaved like we are right now, Hitler would have won. He'd have won, because this country won't face any type of, they don't want to sacrifice. What is wearing a mask? How is that? That is nothing to do to be required to do that. And yet we have half the country won't put it on because they got egos. We got a president that won't wear one. And he even gets sick and he still won't wear one. I'm just glad that this generation wasn't around when my mom and dad fought in World War II, because we would have lost had we had the same type of response that we're having today to the simple things of sacrifice a little bit for the common good. So I'll end with my fire and brimstone and say it's been wonderful seeing you all again. I can't say I've missed you. But who knows what'll happen in the future, you know, on all of this. But I can't, again, emphasize to people, please get out and vote. I can't encourage you more how important voting is. Let your voice be heard, and it's not a waste. Don't ever buy the fact that your vote is wasted. If you vote your heart and your conscience, you haven't wasted anything. You've done your civic duty, and it's your duty to do that.
Governor, have you considered 2024? Would you consider running as an independent?
I never looked that far ahead. And we're right in the middle of 2020. I'll tell you what, I'll say this to you today. Had the Green Party given me a clear path to the nomination, I'd be in the race right now. But they wouldn't do it. And I wasn't prepared to have to fix a fractured party first and then take on the Democrats and Republicans after. That would require a Superman, and it's not me.
Governor, how about ballot access? Because of people like Senator Barkley and Minnesota's percent threshold, there was ballot access. Do you think there's currently enough ballot access in Minnesota and across the country for third parties?
No, not right now at all. I mean, the two parties do everything they can to destroy any third party. That's number one on their priority list. They do not want competition. They want only themselves to be players in the game. And that's when you'll see them team up, like they did against Perot, you know, and not let him in the debates.
What about the marijuana parties? In Minnesota, there are two major parties that are in marijuana parties. Do those interest you at all? Are you interested in voting?
Well, first of all, they're obviously not doing a good job. It's still illegal here, isn't it? We're missing the boat on cannabis. The ship's leaving the harbor and Minnesota's standing on the pier. Did you see the other day, Illinois 1 month in July in the middle of the pandemic, cannabis, $71 million of revenue in the state of Illinois. Jesse Ventura tried to legalize it way back when I was governor. See, what you people don't realize, an independent can have a vision. A Democrat or Republican can only see as far as the next election. Also, I find it very interesting now that you hit on that. How about the fact I wanted to legalize sports betting, which is now legalized? I would have paid for your entire Minnesota Vikings stadium with sports betting. But instead, you had to pay for it with your tax dollars. Why? I couldn't get a Democrat or Republican to even carry the bill. As a governor, you have to have one of them has to carry the bill. Couldn't even get one to do it. To legalize sports, because I found out from law enforcement, it's a $3 billion a year industry in the state of Minnesota, sports betting. That means if we act as the bookie, we get 10%. That's $300 million a year. You could have built that Viking stadium in 4 years just on sports betting alone. So I was, look at it, and it's all being legal now. 20 years after I leave office, the light bulb goes off for the Democrats and Republicans. 20 years later, that's the difference, people. An independent can take a view of what I do today, what impact will it have 20 years down the road. Where Democrats and Republicans, they look only to the next election and about keeping the power.
Governor, I didn't actually hear you say vote for Brock. Are you asking people to vote for Brock?
I'm asking people to vote their heart and conscience. I'm not particularly asking them to vote for anyone. That's their choice. Brock is a third-party candidate. I commend him for it. I asked him today, why are you doing this? And he gave me a great answer. He loves the country. And that's good enough. Good enough answer.
Who are you voting for?
I already voted.
Will you tell us who you voted
No,
for? Okay.
it's my business. No, I voted a week ago.
Do you watch debates?
No, I won't watch them for what? For what? I mean, you know what you're going to get. You know what you got. There's no reason to watch the debates. You got the two parties and your choices are clear. You want Trump or you want Biden. You know, you're going along with the two-party dictatorship that we have in this country. It's the only choices you got, I guess. But I guess I'm on the ballot in Alaska.
A classic third-party question for both of you gentlemen. If in fact, in this state here or another state, the third-party candidate ends up essentially playing spoiler, and the candidate that, you know, we end up with Donald Trump, who I think you like less, Governor.
That's the biggest lie perpetrated by the two parties and you, the media. How is voting your conscience and your heart wrong?
I didn't say it was wrong. I said it's math.
It what?
Math.
No.
You take away votes from one candidate.
No, you don't. How do you you're insinuating then we'd automatically vote for them? That's a pretty big insinuation on your part. How do you then determine who we would vote for if we vote? Okay, when I voted for Ross Perot, if I wouldn't have had him to vote for, how do you know who I would have voted for? You don't.
Brock, how would you answer that question?
I agree with the governor wholeheartedly. The idea of voting for a third-party candidate and this concept of throwing a vote away is exactly what has gotten us into this mess. And I remember as a kid in that election of 1996 you were hearing about, when Ross Perot was not allowed in the debates. I remember this episode from The Simpsons, where this like UFO alien spaceship crashes into the Capitol and the aliens come down and say, you have to vote for one of us or you're throwing your vote away. This is not even a new tactic. It's literally the same tactic used in every election to divide us. We are the majority. The majority of Americans are moderate and in the middle, and we care about each other. And we have been divided by this two-party system. 43% of eligible voters are not voting. 70% of Democrats and Republicans are not happy with their party. By next presidential election, 38% of us will be independent. And this divisive idea that voting for anything but the two choices you've been given, red and blue, is a bad thing. Until we vote our conscience, we will forever stay in this perpetual cycle. So remember to do what you believe is right, because we only have the power to change ourselves. But as we become our best selves, as we act according to our conscience, as we do what we believe is right, we have the ability to inspire others. Be the change you wish to see in the world. And as we do that individually, we can do it collectively, and we will get out of this mess.
Let me just fire this at you. Using that analogy of a wasted vote, how many wasted votes were there when I won? I'm asking you, how many wasted votes were there when I won?
The ones for the other guys.
See, it ain't a wasted vote. Just because you're not there gambling, you're not there trying to pick a winner. You're there voting your heart and conscience of the person you feel is best to be the president. And so when they use the wasted vote routine, how can you say that to a guy who won? What, 37% of Minnesotans wasted their vote that day, but guess what? Their wasted vote made Jesse Ventura the governor, didn't it? They wasted those votes, you know? I always remember I was over at the state fair, and my booth at the state fair was, I haven't been back since. Running for governor destroyed the state fair for me. I can't go back there after spending 18 hours a day there every day. But, you know, I'll always remember, though, an incident that took place there during the '98 election where I ran into Mayor Coleman walking to my booth. And my booth, the people were about 8 deep, all packed around it. And the Republicans had nobody and the Democrats had nobody. And I remember I ran into Mayor Coleman, and he had his bodyguard with him, and I didn't have any of that stuff then. And I pointed to my thing, I said, "Hey, Norm," I said, "I'm going to give you a run. And I'll remember it till the day I die," when Norm Coleman looked at me and he went, "Jesse, Jesse, Jesse." Said my name 3 times. He says, "Rest assured, the next governor of Minnesota will be a Democrat or Republican." And I looked at Norm and I smiled and I said, "We'll see." I remember that like it was yesterday when Norm Coleman said that to me over at the state fair. Rest assured, the next governor will be a Democrat or Republican. So use me as an example. I am the example of the wasted vote. If enough people waste their vote, you can elect a third-party person, but it requires you to waste your vote, according to Democrats and Republicans. And I better explain that sarcasm. I forgot, I got to tell you people when I joke. That's a joke. Remember when I had to do that? So anyway, I want to thank you. Good luck to Brock. Wish him well. Commend him for jumping into this mess, especially in this year. And we'll see what happens.
Let's get a picture of you and Brock together. Come on, Brock, come to the podium. Guys together. Elbow to elbow. Make America great.
There you go. And I said I wouldn't take any questions, but I'll take a couple if you got any more. Nobody? Okay, good, thanks.
Brock, how would you make Minnesota a better place?
Well, I mean,
Thanks, Brock.
thank you, Governor. Thank you, Jesse Ventura. Yeah, so Minnesota's not the only part of this country. Obviously, I'm from Minnesota. So I care deeply about what happens in this state. And I'm so proud of the fact that this state made history in electing Jesse Ventura as governor, exactly as you heard. Remember not to let fear divide us. Love is the answer. Fear less, love more. There's a lot that we need to do in this country. Minnesota's clearly part of it, but first and foremost is remembering to have compassion for each other, to take the time to listen to each other, even if they're people you disagree with. Because through that conversation, through that civil discourse, you'll understand the other party's perspective. And from that understanding, we can find a compromise, we can build a bridge, we can find a path forward together. We have to do that. We're on a very dangerous path right now as a country. A very dangerous path. We have to find unity. We have to become the United States of America again.
If it doesn't work out in 2 weeks, do you plan on working on a 2024 campaign? Getting in an independent party, fixing a Green Party? Do you have plans looking down the road?
Yes, of course. So I'm 39 years old. I turned 40 in less than a month. So I've been building the infrastructure and the foundation necessary to run in 2024. But this is not just about me. This is about delivering independence to this country. And so I am looking for 100 candidates for 2021 and 2022 to run up and down the ticket. We are building the technology infrastructure, the database, the ballot access, the funds necessary, the media tools to get the message out. I'm looking for 100 candidates that will be free from the control of a political party, meaning that these candidates, if elected into office, will be free to speak their truth, to act according to their conscience so that we can have a government of, for, and by the people. I'm looking for doctors. I'm looking for doctors, teachers, computer scientists, engineers, business people, artists, entrepreneurs, athletes, whomever, people that are prepared to show up in service, not to be in government for money or power, but showing up because they care about this country and this country's future. As the governor said, vote. The future is going to happen to you, or it's going to happen with you. Let's co-create an America, a future that we all want to live in. Show up and vote. And I know there were some questions around ballots. I can tell you, running for president, exactly a bunch of ways in which this system is rigged. We set up our original campaign headquarters in Los Angeles. Los Angeles outlawed democracy. They decided that campaigning in an election year was not an essential business. So we had to move to New York. To get on the presidential ballot in New York, you need 15,000 petitions or signatures of people that want you to be president. In April, as New York was getting hit harder than anywhere in the world by COVID, you'd think they might try digital signatures, maybe lower the bar, or if nothing else, do nothing. What did they do? They increased the number from 15,000 to 45,000 to make sure that no independent candidate could get on the ballot. But it gets worse. Third parties, if they performed well enough in prior elections, have ballot access. They can nominate. They put in place another rule that said if you don't get at least 2% of the vote or 130,000 votes in the general election, that party would be permanently disbanded forever and ever to discourage them from nominating people. Our democratic process is legitimately under threat. Here's a really crazy number. To be a presidential candidate as a Democrat or a Republican, you need 25,000 signatures in this country. As an independent, you need roughly 700,000 petitions. Does that sound fair? Does that sound like the America that is encouraging us to have as much choice? The land of the free, it's about choice. And I commend anyone that's willing to take the risk to run for office. To run for office, to run for president, I had to ask myself, am I prepared to give up everything I have? Because that's what's at stake. That's the risk. And not just everything you have, possibly your liberty and maybe your life. That is the stakes of running for this office, and that is exactly how much I care about our collective future. I'm a father. I have 2 daughters. What kind of world are we going to leave for them?
Brock, just one thing. Don't make that typical politician fist. If you're going to make a fist, make a fist. Not this bull crap. You know, this is the politician fist.
Well,
how could you knock anybody out with that?
So
make a fist if you're making one.
But the fist that I want to make, because this is not the fist we need in this country right now, we need a hand like this. This country needs open hands, open hearts, and open minds.
And none of them politician fists.
I will make sure of that. Thank you for the coaching.
Hold up a damn fist. If you open up a fist,
photo. Come on, guys.
raise a fist,
Let's
not
show
that
some
politician fist.
Get up and rumble.
That's just a personal thing with me. I always laugh.
Hey, I'm also willing to say I don't have all the answers. That's a little refreshing, not something you hear from many politicians. But I know the process of getting to the right answers, and I'm always willing to show that. And I'm also here to be corrected. I make mistakes, but I take responsibility for them. And I'm here to listen and to learn. Are there any other questions?
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you, Minnesota. Thank you, Governor Jesse Ventura. Thank you, Senator Dean Barkley.